Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
1 minute ago, the silence inside Clarence House was shattered by a confrontation no senior royal advisor had been able to prevent. Prince William entered Queen Camilla's private sitting room carrying a red financial file marked with the names of 3 royal charities. He did not sit down. He did not exchange pleasantries. Instead, the future king placed the file before her and demanded an explanation for donation records that appeared to have been deliberately falsified. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William had paused outside that door seconds earlier, rereading one page until the figures burned into his mind. A confidential palace audit and internal examination of official accounts showed that donations announced under Camilla's patronage did not match what the charities received. One entry celebrated £750,000. The organization's ledger showed only £250,000. £500,000 had vanished from the public story, even though donors had been thanked for the full amount. The prince closed the file, told the secretary to remain outside, and entered alone. His jaw tightened at a handwritten approval beside the altered figure. These were not accounting errors. The missing funds were linked to domestic abuse survivors, readers, and elderly people needing care. Every false total carried a human cost, and the monarchy's name had made those promises sound certain. Camilla asked why he had arrived without warning. Her voice stayed steady until the file struck the table. The queen consort reached toward it, hesitated, and pulled back when William said, "Before you touch that, tell me who changed the numbers." She opened the folder, scanned 2 pages, and closed it. Camilla insisted that financial administration belonged to staff. William reopened the file, turned it toward her, and pointed to an office code beside the largest discrepancy. That code was used only by senior members of her household. The alteration had not come from an outside accountant or junior clerk. It had come from inside her circle. Then the prince revealed how the evidence reached him. An unnamed member of the royal household had delivered it to Kensington Palace, William and Catherine's London residence, with a warning. Ask who benefited from keeping the true totals hidden. The room went cold. Camilla stared at the notation while William waited for an answer she could no longer avoid. But before he could learn whether she ordered the changes or merely allowed them, he faced a darker truth. This was no longer only about money. It was a battle over loyalty, trust, and the future moral authority of the crown. The figures inside the red file were explosive, but the numbers alone could not explain why William's confrontation felt so personal. For him, the charities represented promises made in the monarchy's name. For Camilla, they represented years spent building public legitimacy after decades of hostility. And for King Charles, trapped between his wife and his heir, the dispute threatened to tear apart the 2 relationships upon which the final chapter of his reign depended. William had built his public role around accountability, results, and a modern idea of royal service. Charitable patronage, a formal royal connection to an organization intended to raise attention and support, meant nothing to him if the figures could not survive honest examination. Before entering Clarence House, the prince studied photographs from one affected refuge. A handwritten note from its director thanked the palace, but quietly admitted that promised money had arrived late. He folded the note once and placed it inside the audit file. Camilla saw something different when she looked at those same records. Her charity work had become the strongest proof that she could serve the monarchy with purpose, not merely occupy a royal position. The queen consort had spent years trying to separate her public identity from old anger and suspicion. Now one file threatened to destroy that progress in a single afternoon. "You came here with your verdict already decided," Camilla said. William did not raise his voice. That made the moment worse. The future king answered that he had come with figures, dates, and statements from organizations that had trusted the palace. Her face tightened because the challenge came from the man who would one day inherit the institution in which she had fought to secure her place. At Buckingham Palace, Charles received the first warning through a handwritten note from his private secretary. Buckingham Palace was the monarch's main working headquarters, where official royal decisions were coordinated. The king read the message twice, removed his glasses, and placed them beside untouched tea. William had gone directly to Clarence House. Charles understood immediately that neither side would accept a quiet compromise. Catherine had already seen a summary of the audit the previous evening. The Princess of Wales warned her husband, during a private conversation, to separate provable facts from old resentment. She knew his anger was justified, but she also knew one reckless sentence could turn accountability into a family war. Anne had reached the same conclusion through a documented briefing sent to William's office. The Princess Royal demanded that no royal household be protected from examination. Her support strengthened him, but it also told Camilla that family loyalty would not automatically shield her. "You have never trusted my motives," Camilla said. "This is not about what I think of you," William replied. "It is about what the charities were told." That answer struck harder than accusation. It removed her last defense. Then the prince turned another page. The questionable entries had begun months earlier, immediately after one glittering royal fundraising ceremony that ended in a furious private exchange. To understand why the numbers changed, William would have to return to the night when a celebrated triumph became the secret point of no return. The crisis did not begin with an auditor, a leaked file, or William's arrival at Clarence House. It began 6 months earlier, beneath the glittering chandeliers of a royal fundraising gala, where Camilla announced that £2 million had been secured for vulnerable women and families. The audience rose in applause. Charles smiled beside her. Yet less than 20 minutes later, behind a closed service door, a charity director quietly told a palace aide that the confirmed total was nowhere near that figure. Camilla had made the announcement at the Crown Relief Partnership Gala, a royal fundraising event created to bring major donors and several charities together under one public campaign. She spoke with confidence, thanked the room, and declared the target reached. The Queen Consort believed the figure would prove that the campaign had real power. Charles believed the night had given her the success she had spent years trying to earn. Evelyn Hart knew otherwise. The refuge director found Camilla's deputy private secretary after the speech and explained that only £1.2 million had been formally pledged. Several promises were still verbal. One major donor had already withdrawn. Evelyn repeated the number because she feared the charities would soon be expected to plan services around money that did not exist. Camilla received the warning in a private antechamber. Her aide suggested correcting the total before the evening ended, perhaps describing the £2 million as a projected figure rather than money already secured. She tightened her grip on the speech cards and refused. A correction now would humiliate the donors, Camilla said. It would weaken the campaign and turn tonight into a scandal. The deputy secretary asked one final question. Should the official record state that some of the money remained unconfirmed? The figure has gone out, she replied. Make the records reflect the commitment we were given. That sentence became the point of no return. The office reclassified promises as completed donations. Delayed payments were marked as received. Private pledges were counted across more than one campaign. Anticipated funds slowly became official money on paper. All because changing the first figure would expose the original mistake. William had witnessed part of the aftermath without understanding it. As the prince left the gala, Evelyn approached his equerry and asked who should be contacted about the missing portion of the announcement. He noticed her distress, but the moment passed beneath the celebration surrounding them. Months later, the memory returned while he reviewed the audit. William pushed back his chair, demanded the gala attendance list, and found Evelyn's name beside the charity with the largest shortfall. Camilla had understood the danger that same night. She removed her brooch in silence, while her secretary left an amended briefing nearby. The queen consort stared at it, refused to sign, then told him to use her office approval code. Now that instruction sat on the final page of William's red file. Armed with proof linking every false figure to one decisive evening, he returned to the sitting room determined to force an answer that neither rank nor family loyalty could soften. For several seconds, neither William nor Camilla spoke. The original gala instruction lay open between them, its typed language careful, its meaning unmistakable. Then the prince asked the question every advisor had hoped could be avoided. Did you order your office to record promised donations as money already received? Camilla looked toward the closed door, perhaps expecting someone to enter. No one did. William had deliberately ensured that this answer would belong to her alone. William traced the evidence from the gala announcement to the amended ledgers, and then to the charities that had received less than the palace claimed. A ledger was the official record showing money promised, received, and spent. Once the first total had been protected, later numbers were changed to support it. 3 organizations had planned services around money that never arrived in full. Camilla insisted the £2 million figure came from genuine commitments made by credible donors. The queen consort argued that her office had not invented money. It had recorded funds expected to arrive, and protected a campaign that might have collapsed if the public learned major pledges were delayed. A promise is not a payment, William said. A projected total is not money received. His anger sharpened as he explained what those differences meant beyond palace walls. Charity directors had hired staff, planned beds, and reassured vulnerable families because the monarchy's statement sounded final. The future king told her that people trusted royal announcements precisely because they believed those words had been checked. Camilla's restraint broke. She accused him of using one financial failure to question her entire place within the family. She reminded him how often she had faced public hostility without answering back, and how carefully she had rebuilt trust through charitable work. To her, this confrontation felt less like an audit and more like a judgment on everything she had fought to become. Then Camilla pushed her chair backward and stood. She declared the conversation finished and moved toward the door. William stepped forward and closed it before she could leave. "It finishes when the charities receive the truth," he said. The prince reopened the gala instruction and pointed to her handwritten initials beside the words, "Retain announced total." Camilla admitted writing them, but she claimed she had approved a communication strategy, not false accounting. William turned another page. Camilla's chief financial administrator had signed an authorization connected to the altered records. A sealed statement, a confidential written account, formally submitted for review, said the office acted after receiving direct verbal instructions from her. Camilla stopped arguing. She sat down, pressed one hand against the table, and asked whether Charles had seen the statement. William told her the patronage accounts would be frozen, an independent review would begin, and no new figures could be issued under her name. She answered that only the monarch could suspend her household's authority. "Charles has already been asked," William said. "He is waiting for us." The truth had been exposed. Now the king had to choose between protecting his wife and preserving his heir's faith in the crown. By the time William and Camilla arrived at Buckingham Palace, King Charles had already read the audit summary, the gala instruction, and the administrator's sealed statement. A single authorization sheet rested before him. With one signature, he could suspend his wife's control over the disputed charity accounts. Without it, he would openly defy his son and risk appearing to shield financial deception. The king held the pen, but for several painful minutes, he could not bring himself to use it. Charles alone held the formal power to act. As sovereign, the reigning monarch with final authority over the royal household, he could freeze the financial privileges of Camilla's office and approve an outside review. William could expose the evidence and demand accountability, but the final decision belonged to his father. The proposed order transferred temporary control of the affected funds to an independent royal charitable board, led by Princess Anne. The Princess Royal, the title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, had agreed to oversee the process only if outside accountants received full access to donor messages, internal emails, payment records, and approval logs. Charles looked from his son to his wife. William's anger had become cold and disciplined. Camilla's confidence had disappeared. The king understood that hesitation would look like protection, yet signing the order would publicly confirm that he no longer trusted her office. He searched for another path. Charles suggested correcting the figures, privately covering the missing amounts, and allowing Camilla to keep her patronages. The queen consort remained silent as he spoke, but William rejected the compromise immediately. Hidden repayment would repeat the same mistake, the prince said. We would still be protecting appearances instead of telling the truth. The argument struck Charles because it was impossible to dismiss. The monarchy had promised help to vulnerable people. Quietly replacing the money might repair the accounts, but it would not repair the lie. Anne's documented terms made the decision even harder. Her office had demanded access to a hidden contingency account, a reserve holding money from cancelled events and unfinished campaigns. Investigators believed part of the missing funds had been moved there to conceal the gap between announced donations and money actually received. Charles lifted the authorization sheet and read the first paragraph again. Then he looked toward Camilla. "You know what this will do to me," she said. The king lowered his eyes. He also knew what refusing would do to the crown. Charles signed. He placed the pen down carefully, slid the order toward William, and said, "This is not a judgment of guilt. It is a judgment that trust must be earned again." Camilla remained seated when everyone else stood. As an aide reached for the file, she held it for one final second before letting go. Within the hour, her staff codes would be disabled, her charity announcements cancelled, and one trusted member of her household would make a decision that deepened the scandal. Charles's signature had ended the argument, but beyond the study, loyalties were already breaking. The suspension order reached Camilla's office before she returned from Buckingham Palace. Her financial access was disabled. 2 charity appearances vanished from the royal schedule. Staff members were ordered not to delete, change, or remove a single record. Then came the blow she had not expected. The deputy private secretary, who carried out the original gala instruction, asked for protection from dismissal and offered to cooperate fully with Princess Anne's review. Camilla's accounts were frozen within minutes. Outside accountants secured emails, payment logs, and donor records, while every fundraising announcement linked to the disputed figures was withdrawn for checking. The review was an independent examination, meaning officials outside her household would test every number without taking orders from the people involved. The queen consort returned to Clarence House and found a revised diary waiting for her. Blank spaces replaced 2 charity visits. Her planned appearance at a women's refuge had been cancelled because palace officials feared her presence would drag vulnerable families into the scandal. Another engagement had been reassigned to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, a senior working royal trusted to represent the crown during sensitive moments. Camilla removed her glasses slowly. She asked whether even private calls to the affected organizations now required approval. Her secretary answered yes. Then Martin Hale's statement arrived. The deputy private secretary wrote that he had warned against treating unconfirmed promises as completed donations. Camilla read the first paragraph, closed the envelope, and asked why he had waited until now to speak. Martin gave his answer during a documented interview with Anne inside Buckingham Palace. He struggled to keep his hands still as he admitted following the instruction, because he feared losing his job. But the guilt became unbearable when charities began cutting services, while royal records celebrated money that had never arrived. Anne pressed him for details. Martin revealed that part of the missing money had not been stolen for personal use. It had been shifted between campaign categories to hide shortfalls and make every public target appear successful. One transfer carried the deepest cost. A £300,000 payment meant for Evelyn Hart's refuge network had been deliberately delayed so the money could temporarily support a literacy campaign before its annual report was released. The adjustment protected one success story by forcing another charity to suffer in silence. William heard the human cost during a private telephone call with Evelyn. She explained that the delay had stopped 6 emergency accommodation rooms from opening. The prince stopped writing and asked how quickly those rooms could be prepared if the money arrived immediately. He authorized bridge funding through a separate foundation. Bridge funding was emergency money used to keep vital services running while a larger dispute remained unresolved. William insisted that it be described honestly, not disguised as the original donation. Camilla learned what the delay had done. This time, she did not call Charles or challenge Anne. She contacted William directly and requested one private meeting. No aides, no lawyers, no titles between them. The scandal had reached real people. Now neither rank nor staff could speak for her. They met after dusk in a small library at Clarence House, with no aides outside the door and no official papers on the table. Camilla arrived first. William entered moments later, but remained standing until she asked him to sit. For once, neither addressed the other by title. The fury of their first confrontation had disappeared, leaving something more difficult behind. A woman forced to admit why she protected a false figure, and a son deciding whether remorse could still matter. Camilla had requested the meeting because the formal review would soon turn every choice into evidence. An official review was a structured investigation used to decide responsibility through records, interviews, and financial proof. She wanted William to hear the human reason before accountants and lawyers reduced the crisis to dates, codes, and signatures. William agreed to listen, but he warned that nothing said in that room would reverse the suspension. The prince had not come to negotiate peace within the family. He had come because charities had suffered, and because understanding her motive might explain how one false announcement became months of deception. Camilla spoke slowly. She said the gala was supposed to prove that her work had finally become stronger than the scandals attached to her past. The queen consort believed a successful campaign would show that she had earned a place through service. When the total fell short, she panicked. Once I said £2 million. Correcting it felt like admitting the applause was never mine, Camilla confessed. She admitted that fear became a trap. The first altered figure protected one evening. The next adjustment protected the first lie. Soon, delayed money and unconfirmed promises were being moved across records simply to preserve an image she could no longer control. Then Camilla removed the royal charity pin from her jacket and placed it between them. The emblem represented her formal connection to the causes she supported. She told William she would not wear it again until every organization confirmed that all promised funds had been restored. William listened without interrupting. His anger did not disappear, but it changed. The future king said he understood the fear of public failure. Then his voice hardened. People living in shelters cannot be asked to finance a royal reputation. Camilla accepted the words. She admitted through a signed statement that her staff had not created the strategy alone. She had approved keeping the gala total unchanged, encouraged her office to treat pledges as secured money, and failed to stop internal transfers after learning about them. She handed William the confession and a restitution pledge, a written promise to repair financial harm. Camilla agreed to surrender leadership of the affected patronages and support repayment from the reserve account and her office's non-essential event budget. William accepted the statement on one condition. Accountability had to be public enough to restore trust, but not so theatrical that the charities became trapped inside royal humiliation. Charles approved the joint announcement. Yet before it could be released, the public saw Camilla leave without the pin that had once defined her charitable authority. At 8:10 the next morning, Camilla stepped from Clarence House wearing a plain dark coat. The charity pin normally fixed above her heart was gone. She paused beside the waiting car as photographers called her name, but she did not look toward them. Within minutes, that single image appeared across television screens and newspaper websites. The Queen Consort without the emblem of her most celebrated work, her hand gripping the car door as the palace prepared to admit that the donation records had been false. The London Chronicle placed the photograph across its front page beneath the headline, "The Missing Millions, Royal Records Corrected After William's Challenge." The image became the symbol of the crisis. A royal patronage was a formal connection between a member of the monarchy and a charitable cause, meant to bring attention, trust, and support. Now that trust had become the issue. Daniel Mercer framed the story during a live national broadcast. The presenter said the central question was not whether Camilla had placed money in her own pocket. It was whether the Crown had knowingly described promises as completed acts of generosity. That distinction changed the public argument. Buckingham Palace released a formal statement confirming that donation figures had been recorded inaccurately and that money had been shifted between campaigns. The palace promised that every outstanding amount would reach the affected organizations. It also announced that the Queen Consort had surrendered financial supervision of the 3 patronages. William's role appeared clearly in the documented account. The Prince of Wales had requested the independent review after receiving evidence of the discrepancies. Some praised him for protecting the integrity of royal charity work. Others accused the future king of exposing his family with unnecessary force. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace. Some carried handwritten signs demanding transparency. Others argued that Camilla's confession and resignation should count as real accountability, not a reason for endless punishment. Anger and sympathy stood only a few feet apart. Evelyn Hart cut through the noise. Speaking during a recorded interview outside the reopened refuge rooms, the charity director said, "What mattered was never the palace's embarrassment. It was whether 6 frightened families had somewhere safe to sleep." The review confirmed that records had been falsified to protect announced totals. It found no evidence that Camilla had enriched herself personally. The wrongdoing involved false reporting and the misuse of internal funds, not private theft. William watched Evelyn open the first restored room from Kensington Palace. Catherine noticed his shoulders relax. The Princess of Wales said nothing as he switched off the television before commentators returned to family rivalry. Camilla then issued a direct written apology. She accepted that fear of reputational damage had placed appearance above accuracy and refused to blame her staff. That evening, Charles, William, Anne, and Camilla gathered to decide the permanent consequences. The public had received the truth, and the charities had received their money. Now the monarchy had to decide what accountability would mean after the headlines faded. The final meeting did not end with shouting, exile, or a dramatic removal of titles. It ended with 4 members of the royal family seated around a table, accepting that the monarchy had nearly sacrificed its credibility to protect one successful evening. Camilla would keep her constitutional position, but she would permanently surrender financial control of the affected charities. William would oversee a new transparency system, and Charles would publicly acknowledge that loyalty to family could never outrank loyalty to truth. Camilla accepted the permanent consequence without protest. She resigned as controlling patron of the 3 charities, and retained only a non-financial honorary connection, where each organization agreed. A controlling patron was a royal figure, with influence over major public decisions connected to a cause. From that moment forward, the Queen Consort could no longer approve fundraising totals, donor acknowledgements, or campaign reports. William then presented the new transparency rules. Every royal charity would publish independently verified annual figures, separating promises, confirmed contributions, received money, and internal transfers. The prince made the reason clear. No future household would be allowed to turn expectation into fact simply because the truth felt inconvenient. The missing funds were restored in full. 6 refuge rooms opened. The literacy program restarted its suspended grants. The elderly care initiative received the balance it had waited months to receive. The damage could not be erased, but the people affected would no longer carry the cost of royal deception. Charles faced his own failure. The king admitted during the recorded family meeting that he had first searched for a private solution because he feared what exposure would do to his wife. He now understood that protecting Camilla in silence could have harmed the crown more deeply than public honesty. William answered with the clearest statement of his future reign. History, ceremony, and status could not demand trust. The monarchy had to earn it through action, especially when wrongdoing came from inside the family. Camilla then placed an unsigned resignation letter before Charles. It would have removed her from every royal duty. The monarch did not tear it apart. He folded it, placed it inside the file, and told her that remaining in service would now require humility, not protection. Camilla understood the verdict. William had not confronted her to erase her place. He had confronted choices made in pursuit of approval. Losing control of the charities became the price of accepting that applause, built on false figures, had no value. William did not offer immediate forgiveness. He acknowledged her confession and her refusal to blame junior staff, but firm boundaries replaced the silence that had defined their relationship. Days later, the prince visited the reopened refuge without cameras or a formal speech. He thanked Evelyn Hart for speaking when silence would have been easier. Camilla, meanwhile, began writing personal apologies to every affected charity. The falsified records wounded the crown, but revealing them prevented permanent damage. William's confrontation was painful, Charles's signature was costly, and Camilla's admission came late. Yet accountability prevailed. The red file had entered Clarence's house as evidence of deception. It left the palace as proof that even within the royal family, truth could no longer be postponed for the sake of appearances. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.